Welcome into a fresh week of Daily Faceoff live, streaming live on the DFO YouTube and brought to you by Fountain Tire. Fountain Tire specializes in tire and auto service, and you don't have to settle for a good deal or good customer service because at Fountain Tire, they do both. And right now, you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear, until December 14th, plus an extra $50 on any service of $150 or more. Some restrictions apply. Stop into Fountain Tire today and make an appointment. Tyler Yaremchuk and Frank Seravalli jumping into a new week like we're Saquon Barkley reverse hurdling over a Jaguar, Frank, huh?
Dude, still outrageous. It's one of the craziest plays. Like, you watch that. I was in the stadium, watched it in real time. I was like, did that just happen? And that it's amazing because as ridiculous as that was, that might not have even been the best play of the game.
Yeah, that was you were treated to a wild football game. Just watching that replay over and over on TV was insane. Every once in a while, these high-end athletes, they still find a way to do something new that just leaves your jaw on the floor.
It's crazy. And we see it time and time again in hockey.
Here's what's coming up today on the show. Yes, of course, talking hockey. Michael Russo is going to join us in a little bit. We're going to talk about the Minnesota Wild and their hot first month of the season. And we're also going to look back at what happened this weekend, Frank, and another team out east that's hot. It's the Ragin Canes. The Carolina Hurricanes just keep racking up the dubs. And a big driver of all this is Martin Necas. 7 points this weekend. It puts him up to 18 on the year. He's got 3 straight multi-point efforts, and it's led his Carolina Hurricanes to an 8-2 record. Has this Canes team changed your opinion of them at all with their play over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think when we went into this season, I believe the Carolina Hurricanes to be a good team, probably still really close to a 100-point team, but one that would take maybe a 5-point haircut off of last season and the last few seasons. And the reason for that is just the sheer number of bodies that they lost on the back end. But when you go back and you look through this team and really how they're built, it really feels to me like they kind of answered some of their or filled some of their holes with players that really just seem to fit well. Like, it's all about setting proper expectations, right? They're looking for someone to contribute on the power play. Shane Gostisbehere had been there before in Carolina. He can do that. And when you look at, Sean Walker, ask the Philadelphia Flyers how much they miss Sean Walker to start this year. I don't think they've adequately replaced him. So I think we were all really caught up in the quality of defensemen that they lost in Brady Shea and Brett Pesce, and understandably so. But this is still a really formidable team built from the back end out that, even though we feel at times like they miss some of their superstar power up front, I mean, you see other guys step up. Marty Necas, 15 points in his last 6 games. 5 goals, 10 assists. This is still a really good, formidable, competitive team in the East.
Yeah, I mean, no matter which way you dice this Necas hot streak, it is wildly impressive. When you look at this forward group, you kind of said it, like the knock on Carolina has always been, do they have that pure game breaker, that truly, truly elite offensive force? And you're right, like Aho is close, and Svechnikov, I think, is close. And Necas now, with the way he's playing, he's looking like that guy, but is that an 82-game thing we're getting from Martin Necas? They're built from the back end out. And when Freddie Anderson's healthy, they have a really good goaltending duo. But is this forward group good enough for them to power them on a deep run, on a Stanley Cup kind of a run?
That's the part that I don't necessarily agree on. Like, I don't necessarily think that they are, because they haven't shown the ability yet to break through and be able to beat teams that have that sort of next level of player that the Canes don't have. So that's the funny thing about the Stanley Cup playoffs, though. It's not always about the best team winning. It's sometimes one team gets hot. You go on a run like the Canes have been on, winning 6 straight. Everything feels good. Maybe the result is different. Were the St. Louis Blues the best team in the NHL when they won in 2019? I don't think so. I don't even think they were the best Blues team of the last 10 years. And what about the year before that with the Washington Capitals, 2018? sometimes it's just about giving yourself an authentic opportunity to win over as many times over a 10-year period as you can, in the hopes that one year you break through. I don't necessarily see it on paper with the Canes, but I certainly am not going to knock their chance.
And that's kind of been their mantra with Tom Dundon, right? It's like, hey, just get to the dance, just keep getting to the dance, and one year you'll catch lightning in a bottle. And that really is. You listed some examples there. Like, the NHL is one of those sports where the best team doesn't often or rarely ever is the one that goes on the run and does the damn thing. So it's a great start in Carolina. They're 8-2. They weren't talked about early simply because they didn't play a lot of hockey games early on in the schedule. And now that they're catching up, people are starting to take notice. Sticking out east, but going to the other end of the spectrum, Frank, the New York Islanders, I mean, they were limping along to start the season for a handful of reasons. They have the second worst goals for per game in the NHL. They're one of just 4 teams in the league to not have cracked the 30 goals scored mark so far this season. And now they're limping along, like, really
in a literal way.
Yeah, Matt Barzal, 4 to 6 weeks. Adam Pelech, 4 to 6 weeks. These are key pieces for the New York Islanders that they're going to be without for at least the next month. On top of that, Anthony Duclair is out long-term. They got a couple of guys day-to-day on their blue line. If there is any team in the league right now that should be more on this could get ugly watch, I can't think of them. To me, it's the Islanders.
I think they're a quality selection in that scary category, even though Halloween's over. I don't think the Pittsburgh Penguins are that far away from that. I would include, at least for a temporary basis, the Colorado Avalanche in that group with all the injuries that they're dealing with. But for this Islander team, I mean, I don't pinpoint for me or show me the path for it to get significantly better. Like, even if all these guys are healthy and they're all back, what is it that what's your calling card? What are you going to hang your hat on? What are you going to say? This is how this team is going to vastly improve and they're going to go on a 10-game winning streak to get themselves back in the mix. I don't see the path for them to do so with the way that their roster is constructed, let alone to then take those guys out.
Yeah, I mean, the path to this not getting ugly is both Sorokin and Varlamov having 940 save percentages for the next month. Like, that's honestly feels like what it's going to take here for this.
But would they be able to score their way out of that, even if that's the case? I'm not being funny. 28 goals in 12 games. I mean, that's not pretty. 2.3 goals a game. That's just not going to get the job done. And now you take out your best playmaker. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm with you. And I know you and Colby talked about this last Monday, I think, when I wasn't on the show. But the other kind of angle on this is, listen, Brock Nelson's a pending UFA. Kyle Palmieri is a pending UFA. You can look at the blue line. They don't really have a ton there that would be, quote unquote, good selling pieces. But are you confident Lou Lamoriello would be the kind of guy to go, all right, we got to pull shoot on this thing and sell and tear down?
No, I don't think that's in his DNA. And they probably should, and full marks. We should give full marks to Brock Nelson and to Kyle Palmieri. Those two guys had big years last year, and they're following it up so far to start. Both of them have 5 goals apiece. They've stepped up for this team in a contract year without a lot of support on some nights, and with a group that has a significant talent disparity between themselves and the rest of the league. They've delivered.
Yeah, they have. Again, if it gets to that point out on Long Island, man, if you're willing to retain 50% of Brock Nelson, one of the quietest high-end goal scorers in the league, 34, 36, 37, like all this guy's done over the last half decade is pop at a 30-plus goal pace, 35-plus goal pace. If you're willing to retain half, the list of contenders that would love to have Brock Nelson for $3 million, whew, Frank, that'd be something.
It would, and it might be our only hope to save what is already shaping up to be a pretty quiet trade deadline. So Brock and the Islanders, I don't want to say I'm rooting against you guys, but we could use a little spice.
Yeah, we probably could. Speaking of players in contract years, Frank, that's where I'm going to go for my Weekend Warrior, our Monday segment highlighting anyone from around the league, around the sport who did themselves well over the weekend. And my guy is Nikolai Ehlers, Frank. He is absolutely driving the bus for this Winnipeg offense. 17 points in 12 games. And listen, one of the things that I've already said it was an oversight for me when looking at this Jets team was their forward group. And I went, don't they just kind of have a bunch of like third lines here? Like, who's going to do the scoring? Who's the big piece? And for Ehlers, it's interesting to look back at his numbers, because for kind of 3 years prior to last year, he was producing but was hurt. You were getting 48 points, but it was coming over 52 games. He couldn't stay in the lineup. Then last year, he plays all 82 and the production took an absolute nosedive. Well, he's in the lineup. He's being productive. He had 6 points this weekend for the Jets as they capped off their weekend with a massive win over the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're 11-1, and Ehlers is sitting here in a contract year looking better than he's ever looked.
It actually kind of reminds me of my trade targets board going back to the summer. Nikolai Ehlers on it. You know who else is on it? Marty Walsh. I mean, think about both those guys that we've talked about so far to start this show and how impressive they've been. What if they weren't there anymore? What if Marty Walsh had said he would have signed with the Buffalo Sabres? They had a trade done. It was at the finish line. Walsh wouldn't sign there. I mean, we'd be talking totally different stories. What if Nick Ehlers, what if there was more interest? What if the Jets were willing to make a move, a splash to shake things up? Sometimes the best deals you make are the ones you don't.
Yeah, and you just mentioned two teams reaping the benefit of that right now. Your weekend warrior, Frank.
So I missed Weekend Warrior the first time. So this is my first time playing in this game. I thought the goal was to pick someone a little bit under the radar.
No rules.
Okay. No rules, just right. All right. I'm going to go someone that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, for his play is Alex Vlasic of the Chicago Blackhawks. The Hawks won both games this weekend, picked up 4 points. They're 3-1 on this road trip, including wins over the Avs, Kings, even though they had no business beating the Kings, and the Ducks. So 3 out of 4. Their one loss was to the Sharks. But we did our Four Nations Faceoff roster projections the other day, and some people had asked me, why don't you have Seth Jones as someone on your list of players that you even considered for the Team USA backend? And my answer to that would have been this right here. Alex Vlasic is the only guy from the San Jose Sharks that I think should have been on Team USA's radar. I don't think he's quite gotten to that level yet, but look at this weekend. 52 minutes and 21 seconds of ice time. Vlasic has been really good for the Hawks, picks up 2 points in their 2 wins. And I would argue that this Hawks team, to start, if you really dive into the numbers, they were 3-7-1 going into the weekend, especially coming off of that loss. People were saying same old Hawks team as last year. I don't think that's the case. I think this Hawks team has vastly improved. That has actually just been a little bit unlucky to start the year. The only teams with a worse expected goals versus actual goals differential so far this season heading into the weekend, it was a list of 4 teams that included the Oilers and the Preds, who we view as sort of drastically underachieving so far. The Hawks are in that same kind of category based on what they've been able to generate, but not finish on. And I think they're probably in store for some more luck swinging the opposite way.
To be a 60-point team in the NHL, you need to have a 361 or better points percentage. Last year, there were 3 teams that finished below 60 points in the league. Right now, there is only one pacing for that mark, and it is the San Jose Sharks at 3-8-2. But the point I'm making here is that parity is higher than it's been in previous years. There aren't as many teams in full-on nosedives, and the Hawks are an example of one of those teams looking to crawl out of their rebuild and start to make some progress. We're going to get to our pal Michael Russo in a couple of minutes, Frank, but I wanted to talk about an important story you had over the weekend. You went to Boston to chat with the NHLPA's executive director, Marty Walsh. And I mean, the simplest way to put this is NHLPA acknowledging CTE. Can you explain to me, someone who maybe isn't all in or doesn't quite understand the story here, why is this so significant, I guess?
Yeah, you can read the story on dailyfaceoff.com, and it's significant because this is the first time that any person in any position of power at the highest level of the game has not only acknowledged CTE, the devastating brain disease that can only be diagnosed after death, that comes as a cause of repeated blows to the head. It not only did they acknowledge it, but the NHLPA is forming a CTE advisory committee that is going to be made up to start of 10 players. This was unanimously approved at their executive board meeting back in June. It was kept under wraps until Friday night when Marty Walsh received the Impact Award at the Concussion Legacy Foundation Gala. And there he made that announcement that, look, it's time. The NHL has denied the science for a long time, even though the NFL has been on board and outwardly acknowledging it since 2016. Other major professional sports have as well. And it's odd that for a union whose sole job is to protect players both in their well-being and in their income, that the NHLPA hadn't been willing to step out and say anything at all. Now they are, and you can tell how this is an important conversation for the players. It's going to start with education. It's going to be guided by medical experts in the field. And then after everyone has a comfortable basis of understanding and education, then we're going to start to see some recommendations that might come from this, whether that includes equipment and gear, or whether it includes potential changes to play, whatever it might be. The very beginning of it starts now with CTE from an NHLPA perspective. And I think it was really interesting to hear Marty Walsh wrap up his comments with a solemn promise to essentially say, as of tonight, this was Friday, we're going to take this very serious, and it's long overdue.
Yeah, long overdue, I think, is an important context to that. NHLPA taking it seriously. We're not going all the way to Guardian caps in the NHL though, but I say that as a joke, as you started to see them pop up this year in the NFL.
Actually, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a goalie in junior hockey, I think, or college hockey, that put the Guardian cap on his goalie helmet.
Oh, really?
Which I thought was really interesting. So we could start to see more partnership in terms of that.
Interesting. You'd think actually if any position could do it and not be that, I mean, impacted, I guess is maybe not the right word, but goalie, right? You're in one spot. If it can cut down on your ears ringing after you get a puck to the head and any sort of long-term effects, it does make a lot of sense. All right. Frank has the full story up at Daily Faceoff. The link is in our YouTube chat right now if you want to check that out after the show. Let's move along to our big segment, though, and get to the All 32 with Michael Russo. Michael Russo from The Athletic. He covers the Minnesota Wild. Really appreciate you making some time for us today to talk about the 8-1-2 Minnesota Wild. They're on a 3-game heater. They got the OT win over the Leafs to wrap up their weekend. And when you look at this start to the year, I guess where I want to begin with this is, what's been the most surprising factor that's contributed to this hot start in your eyes?
I mean, probably Philip Gustafsson. Last year was not, as Frank said a couple of minutes ago, sometimes the best trades you make are the ones that you don't. Philip Gustafsson was on his way out this offseason, and there are probably a lot of GMs out there that are kicking themselves for not biting. And Bill Guerin is probably thankful that he didn't make one move that was potentially on the table with Columbus. And here we are, and he is leading the league in goals against average, third in save percentage, and he's just been absolutely unbelievable. Now the Wild are defending really, really well. And if you look at the analytics, it looks like that this is something that's extremely sustainable. Jack Capuano has come in and some revamps to their defensive zone structure, and so far so good. And it's really making Philip in a position where he's just got to make the 2 or 3 big saves a night. And so far he's doing a tremendous job. And so for him to look even better than he did 2 years ago, when he had the second best save percentage and second best goals against average to Linus Ullmark the year that he won the Vezina, this says something about it's a large credit going to him for how they're playing.
It's interesting that you didn't say Kirill Kaprizov and the incredible start that he's had. His streak was, of course, his streak was broken last night against the Leafs, his point streak. But my question would be, as well as Kaprizov has played, and obviously he's someone that helps drag this team into the fight, but 41 goals scored in 11 games. If Kaprizov quiets down a little bit, is the rest of the offense, can that pick him up? Because you've seen some really good starts from Eriksson Ek, for instance, and obviously Boldy's a really good player and he's played well to start. But can this offense play at this pace? Is that part sustainable?
That is the one area that if you look at the analytics, there's a concern. And, I'm really concerned about the second line right now, because at even strength, they have not been great. They've been, underachieving in terms of their expectations. A lot of it has to do with Marcus Johansson on the left side, and this is very highly predictable. He had a terrible year last year, and here we are 11 games into the season. He's played 10 of them, and in his last 9, playing with Boldy and Eriksson Ek, he has managed 1 goal and 0 assists. That's almost hard to believe. And so if Kaprizov slows down, you just got to wonder what they potentially could do. There were a couple shifts last night where Eriksson Ek played with Kaprizov, and you do have to wonder if maybe at some point you flip Eriksson Ek and Rossi, and maybe that'll do something because Rossi has played well with Boldy. The third and fourth lines have not produced up to expectations, but Goudreau's been better, and Hartman's been hurt for a lot of the year, but he's back and scored another goal last night. He has 3 goals in 6 games. So if Hartman starts to look like the player that he did when he had 34 goals, especially, but he is a perennial 20-goal scorer. I think they should be fine on the third line. The fourth line is one that you'd like to see some more offense. Trennan has just done absolutely nothing offensively. So that is the concern, is that if Kaprizov slows down, does the depth of the scoring, allow this team to sustain their incredible start so far?
Jared Spurgeon has been back for 3 games now. Might sound like a funny question, but did the Wild learn how to play without him last year?
Yeah, I mean, they went 4-1-1 without him when he was out of the lineup this year, and they didn't miss a beat. And that was with Brodin playing with Zach Bogosian, who was elevated from the third pair. And I think we all know at this point in his career he's not a second pair defenseman. So they have done a great job. A lot of this is because Middleton and Faber have been exceptional this year, especially Faber. He doesn't have the numbers of Cale Makar, but he's playing like a Norris Trophy type player. Obviously, for him to ever get into that conversation, he's probably going to need to up the offense, but he has been so good defensively. And Jake Middleton, who had at times was up and down last year, he's been outstanding so far. He had a couple blips of the start of the season, and he's just been great. So I think that's part of it. And now Spurgeon has come back, and last night we saw, 2 assists on both their goals. And then in overtime has the, back check where he looked like a 21-year-old Jared Spurgeon again, not a 34-year-old. And he just flies up the ice and outraces Max Domi to a loose puck. And then even more impressively in one motion turns and headmans a puck to Rossi for the Boldy winner. So, they are definitely playing well from a defenseman standpoint this year.
Do you think there's any interest in the Wild front office in terms of maybe making a move to improve this team? It seems like of all the trade conversations to start, and Mike, you're more on top of it than anyone, Minnesota might actually be one of those teams that's kind of in the mix to maybe do something.
Yeah, I think as we get closer to the trade deadline, their goal right now is to not get into LTIR. That's why Wallstedt was sent down, why Ogren's down, Hunt's down. They're trying at home to really lower their cap, so they're constantly accruing so they could build something toward the deadline and maybe go make a move, whether that's for a big defenseman or to go out and get a scorer. I still think that they got to fix that second line, and I do think that they got to get one more forward. I said this to somebody yesterday. Especially if you could put that player with Eriksson Ek and Boldy, I think would just go wonders for this team. There's a lot of teams out there that need defensemen. The Wild have an extra, if you consider, with Chisholm and Merrill, because they'd love to bring up Hunt and play him full time. But I don't see the Wild right now making a move on one of their defensemen just because of the Jared Spurgeon situation being something that could be a constant thing all year long that they're going to have to monitor to make sure that he doesn't leave the lineup. So, right now I think that they're standing pat, but there's no doubt. I mean, I'm always, especially this time of year, it just seems like Bill Guerin every November makes some sort of move, whether it's, grabbing Ian Cole the one year for Greg Patterin, or grabbing last year's Zach Bogosian and shipping Kalen Addison on his way out. There's always that one move in November, but I think it's probably a little too early because for a forward, I think they'd like to really accrue some cap space and go get an impact one as we get closer to the deadline.
Yeah, we had a Wild fan in our chat right now doing the little dot connection of, wait, you guys were just talking about Brock Nelson. He shoots left. That would look pretty nice in that top 6. But
I can tell you that the Wild love Brock Nelson. It would not shock me as a free agent if they went after him. One of the Brocks, Brock Besser, Brock Nelson, one of them, if they're available. But there is a lot of respect in the Wild front office for Brock Nelson between Guerin, Chris Kelleher, John Hines loves him. So that's always a possibility.
Yeah. I think our Anthony DeMarco is also, he thinks the Wild might be poking around a little bit on some of the Flyers' younger forwards that they've got in their lineup. So that would be interesting as well. Morgan Frost, maybe an opportunity. You look at some of the other guys that they have there. Bobby Brink, Joel Farabee. You think age, scheme, and where the Wild are going, that could certainly connect a dot as well.
I remember a couple of years ago, the Wild didn't draft Brink, and there were a lot of Wild fans pretty disappointed. So he might make sense.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I'm looking at Puckpedia right now. Projected deadline cap space. If all things stay the same, and I know injuries always throw a wrench in that, but right now it could get as high as $10 million for the Wild.
And that will change. A lot of it's because they're right now. They don't even know if they have they have one extra guy on their lineup. So, when we go on the road trip in a couple days, they're obviously going to bring up a forward just as insurance. So it's going to fluctuate as they manipulate the roster when they're at home. But their one goal is to avoid what happened last year, guys, and that's get into LTIR where they just can't accrue all year long.
Michael Russo from The Athletic, really appreciate you giving us some time. Thanks, man.
Yep. See you guys.
You can find him on Twitter at Russo Hockey. But if you're a hockey fan, you're already following Michael Russo. You don't need me to tell you that. Frank, let's move along to our daily Faceoff inbox question. Hashtag AskDFO. Big deal or little deal, David Pasternak's benching in the Bruins win?
Probably a little deal. I understand why it's a focal point and talking point. It was for one whole period, the third period, which is interesting. Compare that to the Leon Draisaitl of a couple weeks ago. That was a couple shifts. This was a whole period. This is the Bruins' best player, but they also won back-to-back games on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, pick up a big 4 points, are 1 point back now of second place in the Atlantic for a team that was scuffling to start this year. They're defending better. Jim Montgomery says they're more connected. Obviously, the turnovers for Pasternak were an issue, but I just think there's so much that he does, and that team seems to be craving some accountability, at least according to Brad Marchand, that I don't know. Don't think it's a big deal.
I'll throw maybe an obvious one here, but the hockey world in general will have more overreactions in the Atlantic division than any division. I think the whole year it's going to be like one team loses 4 in a row and it'll be like, well, they're out of a playoff spot. And then they'll win 3 in a row and it's like, oh, look, they're right back in the mix.
Yeah, but look at the Sabres though. They're now off to their worst start in a long time. And they're 5 years into this Kevin Adams build. I'd be real surprised if if this continues in the next week or two, if we don't see a pretty significant Buffalo Sabres trade to try and figure this out, because not good enough and not close, but you can't allow this season to swirl down the drain.
No, you can't. And like I said, an uber competitive division. Joe in the chat, he asked any update on McDavid. Connor McDavid skated today once again at Rogers Place as the Oilers had an optional practice. The Oilers are in action tonight at Rogers Place, which
great question though, because I do think the Oilers are back to being the Oilers, and I think seeing Draisaitl and Hyman get on the board and the rest of the team, they're all kind of figuring it out.
Yeah, they looked pretty solid last night against Calgary Flames. They're back in action tonight against the New Jersey Devils, Monday Night Hockey. That's where we're going for our daily bets, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, NATION, to get in on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Frank, I got one play for that game tonight. Little same gamer. I think it's going to be offense aplenty. Give me over 6.5 and give me Jack Hughes and Leon Draisaitl to each pick up a point. It comes in at plus 190, which again, if this thing goes over, you can definitely see a world where both Draisaitl and Hughes are getting involved. That would make sense. Top line centerman, plus 190. It's basically a juiced up version of the over, which I love. That is my one play for tonight for our friends at Bet365. And Frank, as we quickly wrap up the show here with a little bit of garbage time, I just have a fun one. We started the show with football. We're ending it with football. Tom Brady getting on the skates and ripping around. Apparently this was his first time ever skating, so he had the little kids training wheels. It is hilarious to see one of the best athletes of all time using the little trainer and wobbling their way around the ice. I just thought this was funny.
Yeah, our pal David Alter actually caught up with Max Domi, who his dad Ty was on the ice making this video with Tom Brady, trying to teach him how to skate. This is in New Jersey at the Devils practice facility. I just love to see it because you see the athleticism, you see the knee bend, obviously a little hunched over, but you see him starting to pick up the edges there. Like I was actually quite impressed because you've seen other athletes in other sports try skating or try hockey and they look like Gumby out there. This is like a quality posture to go in with, and I was actually really impressed.
It was solid. Tom Brady, the master of more than just football, the last ever active athlete to be playing and be drafted by the Montreal Expos was Tom Brady. Obviously doing it in a different
I guess he just needs something else to think about after the Giselle news last week. So got to keep your mind off that. Can't fall for the jiu-jitsu instructor.
Yeah, you got to watch.
Get you every time.
I wanted to give a shout out to Denny, who is in the chat. He said, first time watching the show. He's a member of Locked On Wild, likes the show. Thank you, Denny. Appreciate you tuning in. Hit the subscribe button because we're here every single weekday at noon Eastern. We got a morning cup of hockey show that kicks off the day. Andy McNeil with the puck portfolio. For those of you that like betting, Carter Hutton with starting goalies. Plenty going on. Plenty of reasons to subscribe. That'll do it for a Monday edition of DFO Live. Frank and I right back in the mix tomorrow, noon Eastern. Chat with you then. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.